Hello, everyone. How are we doing tonight? I am doing great. Thank you. Getting ready for the trip. So, a lot of shit to do, but I am doing awesome. Thank you for asking. Finally had a nice day, right? And yes, of course, we're going to go into the PA and see all the high resistance bullshit. But if we look at the daily candle and nothing else, we finally had a clean delivery on our daily chart, basically giving us confirmation about our previous idea, right? So I just want to return again. I like to do these. If you haven't noticed, very recently I started doing it and I like it. I like to return to what we talked about in our weekly outlook every single time I'm doing a PA review, because in case you guys did not know, I don't journal these anymore because they're all on YouTube. So I want to be able to go back in 5 years and search up a specific date and have my complete PA review. And I'd like for it to have basically just a quick reminder of what we were looking for beforehand, so that way I can understand better, right? I feel like that is just a good practice to have with journaling in general. So I like to do these to give you guys examples along the way. But we were looking for one side of the range to be taken to then go target the other, as we are with consolidation. That side was taken with SMT. And even again, by the way, if you look at our daily candle of today, we took out previous day low on ES, which was also taken out again, the current weekly low. Well, on NASDAQ, we have not. We've formed a beautiful swing on NASDAQ. We'll get that confirmation when tomorrow, or possibly might wait until NFP, to be honest, guys. We go and take out some buy side, right? Taking into consideration as well that we've only been going up this week, and yes, I do understand that we had to go down before, right? So we went down early on Monday, and now we're starting to go up. It does seem like we could form some sort of divergence at the highs, and NFP could plummet. Now we'll have to see once we get there, but definitely clean delivery on the move we predicted from the outlook. If we go down to 1 hour, I do want to showcase the big SMT, right? I'm just gonna move my mic because it's in my way. Make sure you guys can still hear me. It does appear so. All right. So if we look at this, we'll see the SMT that was originally formed. But now if we compare the swing points from basically Monday's low, right? Yesterday's low, and this morning, our daily low, right? You'll see our weekly candle to the right and our daily candle to the left of that. You'll notice that we once again went to tap that level on ES to go form SMT. So at least we are very consistent, which is something I like with the SMT. If we're talking about during a week, right? ES is the weaker asset, and it is just the weaker asset right now. There's nothing else. There's no sometimes it's the stronger, sometimes it's the weaker. No, ES is the weaker asset overall for now. So definitely, whenever you get some clear price action like that based on your higher time frame displacement, I think I just put that to SPX. There we go. You get some very nice low resistance liquidity run. And of course, if you look at ES, right, we've been consolidating. Same thing on NASDAQ, consolidated. So we're once again ready to go up. Now, did I have any sort of higher time frame PD array that could allow for setup? Yes, the 4 hour, right? If you take your understanding of this internal, then you're going to be like, okay, well, it's going to go and target the liquidity above these highs. And I'm looking at this specific order block. Let me just put a black line here. So I'm looking at my bullish order block right here, and I'm anticipating a move off of that. And even though time wasn't in accordance, if I can say it like that, we had a pretty weird low of day formed at like around 7, pretty much 7, 8. So when that happens, especially when you have news early in the morning, right? We had Powell speaking at 9:30. I think he had a conference or some sort. I honestly did not watch it. And we also had 10 a.m. news. So you would expect New York Open to be pretty shit because Powell is speaking, a lot of back and forth, search and destroy / consolidation. It turns out it was actually the cleanest part of the day. We'll get into it, but just based on our higher time frame understanding, you retrace into a range, discount of the range, bullish order block, you expanded higher. Now, we did go take out this buy side earlier, but if you are going to figure out, right? Because yes, on our daily chart, we already knew, but I want to give you guys basically what I'm looking at to confirm that specific idea. Well, if we are looking at our big range, right? Which what I mean by that is just the latest basically expansion move that I am classifying as a retracement. But if this move higher is the retracement and that actually was a reversal, sorry, how would I know, right? Where would be my invalidation point? Well, this order block, my first premium in efficiency. And yes, you can use this inverted fair value gap, but to me, I did not want to use this because I knew it was going to want to dig into that wick. But yes, that inverted fair value gap lined up pretty well with the liquidity here. Premium order block within the range I am currently talking about was my objective. For yesterday and for today, that was my objective. And now, as you can see, we ran through it, and you clearly, once you see no respect of this order block or no high probability setups form, you can understand that price will go ahead and continue going up to target external range liquidity, right? So our daily swing high at that level, which later leads to our previous week's high. Or is that something else? That's even not previous week's high. That's 2 weeks ago. But our daily external range liquidity, and if we just look on a weekly real quick, we've formed some sort of weekly swing low from this point on. We could still flip the candle. We've seen some quite smaller ranges this week, so we could still flip the candle and end up bearish, so just be careful about that. Now I want to dive down to a 15-minute, because the truth of it is, ICT always said it, right? The cleanest way to figure out where the liquidity is will be on a 15-minute chart. Why? Because price is cleaner in that way, and you're in the perfect ground for an intraday movement. That's why I only use it during the day. And if we look, we had a beautiful London raid. So overnight Judah swing, right? You would look for an overnight Judah swing. And now if you look at my little boxes at the bottom, right at 9:30, we ran to London run. Now I was not trading at 9:30. We had 10 a.m. news, and we also had Powell speaking just earlier. So if I just come over here and pull up the 10 a.m. so that we can later go ahead and look, and basically, guys, based on the same understanding, right? ES is weaker. So if I'm looking for higher prices, which asset will I prioritize? Well, I'm going to prioritize NASDAQ. Now, we did dive into this higher time frame point of interest with SMT. This is good enough to tell me that there is a possibility that that will be low of day. And as well, if we look at midnight for our more advanced people, right, we had delayed protraction, but we had bullish protraction, which led into London expansion lower and consolidation all up until we had our manipulation lower. So even though the time aspect does not align, because whenever you look at probabilities, and I tell you that on trending days, almost all the time the low is formed here. Well, now we just had a trending day, and the low of day was not formed in London. Why? Don't ask me. I don't know. I don't know 100% of the time why the market is doing something. That's why I don't trade during those times. I trade during New York because I know what it's doing during New York, right? But once you're at 9:30, from this point on, you can consider this to be low of day if, of course, we get confirmations on the specific lower time frames, right? And that brings us all the way down. What is this? This is my inverted fair value gap. I am going to remove this, right? If we go back to the 4-hour real quick, just to refresh you guys' memory, I have my bullish order block here. Bearish, sorry. I'm going to mark it out differently so that we'll be able to easily see it. I'm still messing around with my templates a lot, so nothing good here. Now I'm just going to mark out 0.5 so that we can get the mean threshold of that order block, and I can show you guys how I interact with these things. So London run, if we look specifically at 9:30 right here, what did we do? Tiny little open low. Why? Because the daily Judas swing was already done, right? So we did not need to form a 9:30 Judas. But if you look, we had a big piece of consolidation as Powell was speaking. So no, I don't trade those. I talked about it in chat as well. The reason why I don't trade those is because I won't be able to trade them on my main accounts based on the session I trade. I'm not going to start trading at 7 a.m. all of a sudden, first, which means I will never be positioned early enough for when 8:30, well, 8:30, 9:30, even 10 a.m. news comes. Unless, let's just say that 10 a.m. news, unless I'm entered around this part of the range, I'm not feeling safe at placing my stop. I think I'm going to get slipped out if I'm too close. So I'm never going to risk my full account, my own money, right? But on props, sometimes you get a little risky. I prefer to just keep the riskier plays for my challenges, right? The prop firm challenges, I keep the riskier plays for those. But if we do look, we had beautiful delivery. And we also went all the way up here on NASDAQ, which ES did not reach for a while. Now, this is a good point, just a good time to start talking about this. If there's SMT on the lows for ES, and I'm expecting upwards delivery, well, I'm not going to expect ES to be taking out the highs at the exact same time as NASDAQ will, right? If you look right here, when did ES take out the highs? About, what is that, 10 minutes after NASDAQ? And I'm looking at London high, which is this specific range. So 939. So yeah, pretty much. Okay, so 7 minutes after. So there's a delay. So for 7 minutes, we had SMT at a key level of liquidity. But because of my understanding, because of understanding the order flow of price, you can anticipate which SMT will be respected and which won't. Like, for example, I'll go over it again. We had SMT here, showing that all of a sudden ES is stronger. No, I know it's just consolidating. We've just expanded very aggressively. We have news coming. Now we have to put up a temporary high to go raid the consolidation, and then we can start moving forward, right? Why was there no SMT at this specific low? Well, there was with a specific candle, but we're not going to get into that right away. Why was there no SMT here? Because they both consolidated, so they both had to raid the law of said consolidation, right? So that understanding of right market maker models and order flow comes with experience, right? So just take the time to spend more time on the charts, and at some point this just comes, right? This is just learning how to tape read, learning how to study price correctly, and you can only learn that through experience from what I've seen. But all of that to say that my 15-minute target that I had for you guys, which was the current high of day. No, that was previous PM high, actually. So previous day high fully. So previous day high was taken on NASDAQ, but not on ES up until very much later, right? If we look at the previous day's high, we have previous day relative equal highs, right? Yeah, barely swept by 39.25, and here swept by a tick. Nah, that is inducement to me. I still regard those as equal highs. And actually, if we look really at previous day's high, we have right here. But the SMT, I would be comparing these swing points. And as you can see, it only came very much later than NASDAQ did. But as I said, since ES is weaker, I can anticipate that ES will take more time to achieve the same objectives. So that's how you know that even though there's SMT at your profit target, you won't be holding it. Now and again, sometimes it delivers perfectly. Sometimes you decide to hold it through SMT and it ends up reversing on your ass. So the main lesson here is just learn to take profit and manage your trades correctly, right? Try and get the most out of the market, but also don't be scared to hold long term. So basically, be a perfect trader, right? I understand what I'm saying. These are hard things to learn, but with time and only through time and experience will you learn these. Now, enough rambling about trading and trading psychology, we can get straight into price. 10 a.m. news. If I'm looking too long, what do I look for? I look for an open low. I want to see my beautiful candle, 4-hour candle, open low, expand to a high, and then close, because I'm looking for a long, as I've explained, right? Did I have a bullish breaker form? Some sort of possible bullish breaker where both the swing high and the swing low was with the news, but I disregarded this. Why? Because we're consolidating. Even if you look right here, you can clearly tell this is consolidation or high resistance retracement, but we have to take some sort of raid there before we can keep moving forward. Now, I don't remember if it was a 5-minute. No, it was indeed the 15-minute. We were forming a 15-minute fair value gap. And sometimes you just have to wait for that fair value gap to form. And that fair value gap formed right on the 10 a.m. We dug down into it, but we induced this liquidity, right? Which, yes, on ES was not this, but all this low resistance liquidity that we've formed And yes, this is basically the opposite, but you'll see why in a second. We had to rate that because it was consolidation. So I was waiting for a raid, right? You just look at my latest live trading video on YouTube. We went over this. We saw this live. I actually don't know if it was my latest or possibly FOMC one. Oh no, that one did not get recorded. Basically there was a storm at my house. But basically, whenever I spot consolidation, I'll always wait for a raid to engage with price, and it has to be in line with my direction, right? So SMT at the highs here doesn't tell me I want to go long. That tells me, okay, well, Nasdaq is weaker, we're gonna go down. It just tells me, okay, now we formed this SMT to give us our manipulation move, and once that manipulation is done, we are going to be ready to go to our objective. And when time aligned with price, 10:30, the end of the opening day range, the opening the opening range, not the opening day range, the end of the opening range gives you the best insight into that specifically. If we look, we had a beautiful breaker block right here. Now we did expand quite high, but this is still my unicorn at this specific level. And if you entered on this unicorn, and let's just say we had our stop fair value gap right here, you do have an inverted fair value gap to the left. If we dive lower, you'll see this order block right here. So actually stops a pretty regular size stop, right, at 26 handle. And as I said, your objective was the 4-hour order block. Now you add a tick or two to that, and that is 2R. In my book, this is good enough for that more like 1.5 handles, but that is good enough for my low-hanging fruit trade. Now, yes, you can talk to me about how you could have waited while you were in macro, right? Talking more specifically about the 1050 to 1110 macro. Right here, you could have waited and probably caught some better R. And again, you could have had a better stop placement and gained some better R as well, right? There are 20 different things we can say. But at the end of the day, the truth is you can always get more, you can always get less. Like, for example, this is a trade I took, right here. And my stop was here. Why? Because I did not want to see it dig back down here since we already rated twice this area. So now that I've seen buy side, sell side into a raid, and now expansion, I don't want to see us stick back down all the way down there. All of these wicks, this is all balanced inside of a fair value gap. So based on that understanding, instead of placing my stop at the low of this fair value gap, I know I can place it at the bodies of my candle, which means that I allow it to retrace into the latest order block it formed, but I don't allow it to go past. And basically just continuing that bar, you would have reached barely, I reached barely 2R, took some profits. I think I was like somewhere, I was probably at mean threshold actually. So 1.8R, took some profits, got stopped out break even, and my better trade came during the end of lunch macro, which we won't go over because, as I say, you shouldn't be trading this unless you've spent a lot of time in the markets, because you do need a lot of understanding. Possibly once I get back from vacation, we can start doing some more advanced price action lectures, right? Only 100 followers off 1,000 on Twitter, which means that there might be a lot more live trading coming around. So if that does come, I'll spend some more time and do some advanced market maker live trading lectures. That I'll find a better name for it along the way, but definitely. So just concentrating, sorry, that was hard. Concentrating on purely the rise model. You're taking the first breaker that forms after your understanding is aligned, right? So just by framing this, waiting for 10 a.m., and then what do I want to see? Well, I want to Judas lower into, I had my 15-minute PD array at this point. Oh, it happened. Okay, cool. But I didn't have a raid on my consolidation. Stop runs are deep. They're not shallow, right? See how aggressive this move was. We've closed below all of these lows. This is a raid on liquidity. This is a tiny sweep. Is there still liquidity resting here? Yes. Now we've just consolidated more, right? I like to use 2 degrees indicator for that, fractal consolidations, because whenever this happens, it adjusts. It adjusts the consolidation to this level because it understands that now this is the full consolidation because we haven't truly rated this. Once you do have that raid, what do you wait? Well, you have the invalidation of offside PD arrays, right? I'm looking at this inverted fair value gap, gives you signals that you can now start looking for a long. You wait for a breaker to form. That breaker formed here. You're looking at the range. I don't believe we had SMT at this point in time. Yeah, we did not at this specific level. We did once we got to this specific move, right? Getting into the macro. But breaker block, unicorn, overlapping fair value gap, right? The first one, you don't get to choose. Yes, you could have utilized the inversion fair value gap. Okay. And most of my students would have been taking this inverted fair value gap. Why? Because it's the first one after the breaker, right? And if it retraces into that gap, you're expecting it to also tap into the inverted fair value gap. So let's just say I had to place a limit, that's where it would be. But now and again, I like to be pessimistic here. I don't like showing you guys the best possible setup the Rise model give. I like to give you guys the easy setup the Rise model give. The setup that anyone can look for, the setup that can consistently help out beginners, right? And yes, it was shitty delivery, but you would have had your objective met after just a tiny bit of drawdown. And then, of course, trail your stop here once you see expansion through it in macro. Head for your objective, and then I can't justify any way to take profit along the way here. So that would definitely look like almost 2R, adding it that little piece of the pie to just give you 2R. So 2R take profit, which if you're doing it the way a conservative approach would, you would take profit 3/4 of your position here, or let's just call it 50%. You're up 1R realized, and then you get broken even during lunch. Because if you held after being up 3R back to your break even, unless you have a specific edge that can tell me about that, well, I'm going to say that you were gambling. Definitely. Some people do have, they trade probabilities, so they do understand these things. But personally, I do not take that into account. So again, not the cleanest price action from New York Open, right? Definitely the best setups were just the beginning of the New York session. We formed the low of day, which does not happen often. And yes, it does lead to some more high resistance moves during New York and some higher resistance moves during New York. But as you can tell from just the daily range, it did indeed produce a trending day, right? We went the same way, expanded aggressively towards our weekly objective, both in the AM session and in the PM session. So definitely a beautiful objective. And why I like this day so much as well, let me just clean up this before the charts start getting too cluttered, right? By the way, we expanded through, right? We tapped into the 4-hour order block and tapped right up to mean threshold and still did not expand. We kept going higher. So that to me just showed me that we won't be respecting this order block. If I want to see the respect of an order block, I want to see it happen instantly. I don't want to see bullshit through a bunch of time and right just dig back into it. No, I want to see a quick reaction off of the opening price, maybe the mean threshold if I want to see divergence. But enough about that order block. Once that was invalidated, you could look for a PM continuation. When you are looking for the PM session to go in the same direction as your morning, as right whatever session came before, well, I'm not going to start looking for a long trade. I'm not going to say, oh, price will go all the way down to this low and then go higher, which sometimes it does, but not with a lunch range of this specific size, right? But let's just say, right, we just look at this, right? Just look and concentrate on whatever is outside of the red box, because the red box is my lunch range. And as conservative approach, as I say to every person who asks me, I recommend them not to be trading before 1:30. And what happened right at 1:30? Well, you didn't have a choice. There was nothing else, right? We formed a breaker block. That is not my breaker block template. Here we go. We formed a breaker block after raiding this 1:30 low. So just kept accumulating, still accumulation, and then raid. You see displacement finally taking out all these highs. And then what do you have? I'm going to zoom in a little. I don't know why it's so zoomed out. I don't want us to be able to see it. Thank you. And what do you have? Well, very simple, unicorn. Once again. So on trending days, I don't often look at the PM session, but since the morning setup was as it was, that's when I would start to look for a trade in the PM session, as did I today, basically. But I did trade during lunch, which was my best trade of the day. And if we look here, let's look at the PD arrays. So I have an inverted fair value gap right here. I have a fair value gap here and a fair value gap here. So stop would be at the low of this candle. 10 handle stop on NASDAQ is pretty fucking amazing, right? And I don't care if it's 10 handles. I don't care if it's 5 handles. If it's a 3 PD array stop loss rule, that's how I utilize it. I've tested it at length, and the size of the stop loss does not affect it because the whole setup is based upon that. But now, what do you target, right? Specifically, as I always tell you guys, whenever I have a large wick, I like to utilize quarters. But at that point, we were already very high on the quarters. I start showing you guys. We'll go back on it, seeing the setup. You're already above the CE of the wick. So now I'm already expecting it to go all the way up. So am I going to have a target at this quarter? No, because I'm already expecting it to go all the way. So what am I going to use for objectives? Well, standard deviations. And what are the highest probability objectives for breaker block? More specifically, the bodies. But I'm expecting price to run, so I'm not going to go for the bodies. What I like to do is usually just mark out 4 standard deviations and then switch my fib over to the bodies so I can have a clearer idea of what could be a low-hanging fruit objective. So first of all, I'll see that 2 standard deviation. I'll see that specific level. If that offers 2R, I'm going to take a small take profit there. It did. So you could have taken profits here. And then you can hold for 4. And you understand that these are your highest probability objectives that you'll ever have. Now, if you prefer using the manipulation line, go ahead, right? Whatever it is. I did a whole thread on the statistics of hitting these said levels. This was actually beautiful if you use that as a take profit, right? The truth of it is, I don't like to use a bunch of different ones just because I feel like sometimes some will work and then the other one will work. And all of a sudden you have way too much things that are up to discretion, right? So I like to always use the breaker block standard deviation, and I always look at the bodies and at the wicks if I'm expecting a longer move, which I was, but I did not trade this anyways, right? So definitely early profits allowed for 2R, then hold until 4 standard deviation, and then on trending days, always leave a runner is my cue. But as you can tell, we consolidated most of the PM session, especially after the 2 p.m. open, was right here. Open, tiny wick low, then go higher. So of course you're going to consolidate up until end of day macro, which rated the low of this consolidation, right? Once again, well, we didn't rate it, we swept it, but based on intraday, not intraday, end of day macro, I understand that price is going to be reaching for it quicker. I don't know how to explain this the best, and we also had a bunch of SMT, by the way, which at this point, yes, was stronger. It had to catch up. Whenever I'm going to regard these lows, I'm going to regard these lows as relative equal lows. But short term, understanding specifically the end of day macro, which you're looking for something at 50 and then 52, and then you're looking for 55, if I'm not mistaken, all the way to 58. Right? You're looking for specific reactions at these specific times, right? It's just end of day macro is not for me. I watched a 3-hour video lecture from ICT himself. I don't like it. I don't see the point of trading the end of day macro personally. I prefer to be positioned throughout the day, right? We had a setup very early. This is lunch. We had a setup pretty early, actually, around 11, and then you had a beautiful PM setup to provide you with a good day. Now, this was a harder day for me personally, right? I ended the morning up $300, and this end of lunch macro turtle soup, I took a tiny buy under that low, followed by this beautiful displacement. I was almost fully out at this high, right? This clutched my day. I ate it, ended 1800 up on my 250K account. So just a little over 4R there. So definitely clutched up. But I don't know about you guys. Basically, I just wanted